Hi, everyone. I'm here with DM David and John. We're going to talk about the D&D movie. We're going to try not get too sidetracked because there's all sorts of news going on right now with D&D. We might touch on a few things at the end, though. So let's launch it off with the D&D movie. And if I share here, the current gross for the movie worldwide is 85 million. I think the budget was around 150 million from what I've read. So it looks like they got a chance to get above that, and that would be great because it'd be nice to see some sequels and some other movies like this one. So, what are your initial impressions on the movie, guys? David?
Well, once, not too long ago, movie producers would license a work of science fiction, fantasy, a game, something like Captain America, Buck Rogers, I, Robot, Mario, and they were just looking for a familiar name to put butts in seat opening weekend and to give marketing a head start. If it was a genre like sci-fi fantasy games, then the producer and the creative team almost certainly didn't care about the stories and characters behind the brand. They were probably even contemptuous of it. Um, the, these genres they would think were for kids, and who cares what 10-year-olds think. The creators behind these franchises are hacks who lack the capacity for serious creative works. If you followed their lead, then you were worse than a hack. I think it shows just how far we've come that someone can make a D&D movie. This is a game that not too long ago people thought of as a cultish pastime for folks who couldn't handle reality. And then in this movie, they've layered it end to end with attention to the game's lore. Characters have personality and they have story arcs. They cast stars to play the characters. And here's the biggest one: they created humor that comes from the characters and the situations instead of falling to that classic temptation of winking at the camera and making fun of the property and its fans, as if to wink and let everybody know that they made the movie for a buck. And we personally, as the creators of this movie, are too good to actually take the property seriously. Um, so the movie completely avoids that, you know, expectation that folks who have been, watching these genres for a while, um, and they set out to make a fun, uh, lore-filled D&D movie, and they landed the hardest part of that. They succeeded. They got every detail right. It's a really fun, entertaining romp, and I loved it.
I think I would take the humor piece especially a bit further. There's humor in the movie that comes not out of the characters and not just laughing with the movie or as opposed to at the movie. But there's humor in there that comes out of the experience of playing. I mean, you have an Eric Kokra judge in the opening scene whose name is Jarnathan, and they keep hitting that name hard, and the character Ed is repeating that name and saying that they're insisting on getting to see Jarnathan the way a player will badger a DM who come up with a bad name in the moment. And so there's just these stunts and tricks that happen in the movie that are not just about the pleasures of the storytelling, but about the sort of storytelling, the humor that comes out of the game itself, out of the mistakes we make in those improv moments and stuff like that. It's fantastic in its attention to the experience of play and our passion for the game. The people who made it love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And they nailed a flavor of a distinct storytelling flavor of the story that might come organically out of a session.
I love the really clunky breaks for backstory that we get that are exactly the way it happens in game as opposed to the way you might integrate it better into a movie. It's just dynamite.
I think in honor of the name, we should all change our names to an R in it, like I just did.
Torm,
Jarm, Darvid, and Tarm. Yeah, that's a really good trope, and you know they did it on purpose too, right? I think I saw a interview where they said, "Yeah, that's where that came from."
Yeah.
Having to name a character quickly, just had an R in there somewhere. And it's a critical hit too. It's like 90% with critics, 94% with the audience. So doing fantastic there. So that should give it some legs, hopefully. It's
Yeah.
gotta it's gotta break into the non D&D crowd, right? The D&D crowd, they went and saw it. Um, they were largely happy with it. Now it's gotta have legs and get into the mainstream.
I had friends seeing it with me who are not D&D players, and they said things like they never understood how fun the kinds of humor that would come out of the game.
Hmm.
So I think it's going to be, I think it will be the kind of gateway drug we need, or
Yeah,
that Hasbro needs for D&D.
and
Like,
will it bring in a lot more players too? It certainly has that possibility, I think. They did such a good job on it.
yeah,
And like you said, it is fun without making fun of itself,
yeah,
which is huge. I mean, I can't believe those movies that would go in there and make fun of the property and expect to ever do good. I mean, if you can't even get the people who like the property to enjoy your movie, how are
Yeah.
you going to get anyone else to enjoy your movie?
Well, I think it's the first time I think we've seen one of these made by people who love the property, as opposed to for people who love the property.
Yeah. And we're coming to a time in history now where everyone who's of the age to make movies like this, grew up with D&D being a thing.
Oh, sure.
So 20 years ago, the people in charge making the movies never played D&D or never knew people who played D&D or anything like that. Maybe I'm older than that. Maybe it was 30 years ago, but still, it's getting better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you see things like Stranger Things and the influence of D&D there.
Hmm.
You see the impact of that D&D generation in Hollywood and in these writing rooms and stuff like that.
So there is some merchandise tie and lots of merchandise tie. And I don't really have like the regular merchandise, but I have some of the D&D Beyond stuff here. There's a Thieves gallery where you can go and grab NPCs that are those characters if you want to include them in your game. There's the magic items available if you want to include those in your game. Dice sets available. Thimberchad, the dragon. That dragon was actually in Out of the Abyss. Is that right, David? Did you run Out of the Abyss?
I did, but I don't think I ran it that far into the book.
Got it.
So I think we missed that.
Hmm.
And yeah, I believe it. Yeah, I believe you're right.
So other things, before I go on to other things going on, any other comments on the movie?
I just think it's great fun, and I'm hoping to go see it again. And you see, I even got the silly die.
Oh, wow. Nice. Wait. Let me blow that up. Let's see
Hold on.
that again, John.
Hold on. Yeah, here. I got the dice bucket. I did not get to the AMC theater in time to get it. So this is spoils of eBay.
Oh,
And
nice.
Wow.
Oh, wow. What'd that run you on eBay?
I'm not speaking of that.
Oh, nice.
It was a hastily made decision after maybe a few too many drinks, but no. Hey,
Hey, no judgment here.
Yeah.
We're all envious.
That's the other thing about D&D now is the people who are playing have the wherewithal to purchase stuff like that. So they can get bigger and bigger, miniatures out there, things I can't afford. I can't keep up with how many miniatures are out there nowadays. There's a lot of market. And the Beetle and Grimm high-end games.
yeah.
So there's some.
I mean, that stuff's all true, and yet it's still a game that is accessible for a couple of bucks.
I know, yeah.
It's a lot more democratic than, say, like some of the high-end computer game stuff that's out there, where you really need a, $2,500 computer and subscription fees and stuff like that to really reasonably play those games.
Well, that's a good segue into one of the other things going on, and that is they had the D&D Direct where they announced a bunch of tie-in type merchandise mostly. Let me just go to a recap here. So here was the recap of the D&D Direct. I'll share the screen. There we go. Blow this up a little bit. So they had D&D Comes to Minecraft, Minecraft Monsters Compendium, Honor Among Thieves, obviously, new player resources. So they're trying to get the tie-in there, right, to the movie, try and get people to come from the movie to play the game. And they got some resources there for that. Some basically free access through D&D Beyond. Play events at local game stores. I think that's going on this weekend. Let's see if it says here. Yeah, April 7th through 9th. Haven't heard much about it, unfortunately. Are you involved at all in any of that? Either of you two?
No.
No. Back that up here. Hasbro March Monster Madness. That was like the plushies and miniature figures, big minis. Secret Lair Alert, so magic cards. Neverwinter module for Menzo Baron Zen. And then D&D Virtual Table. So high end for D&D Virtual Table. Let's take a look at that. Here's a screenshot of the virtual table. And like you're saying, John, you can get into D&D for nothing. Like I'm running some games right now of Shadow Dark where I'm using the free player guide, free DM guide, and that's about it. And you can do the same thing with D&D because the basic rules are free. And then you can take it all the way to the super high end, which this is looking to be, this tabletop, virtual tabletop. So this came about because of, and this is interesting. I wonder if this is some artwork from the upcoming Reign of Vecna storyline.
It looks like it must be, yeah.
Certainly Vecna there.
Vecna with Thanos. Monochrome Thanos.
Monochrome Thanos. Yep. So yeah, that is coming, and it came about because from what I read, the main person behind it, just wanted to be able to play D&D over the computer with their friends and thought that D&D should have their own system, which has been a thing now for 10, 15, 20 years, D&D trying to make this happen. We'll see if this one sticks or not.
Yeah, what I'm eager to see about the virtual tabletop is how it works with the continuum between helping with the rules by, say, making all your rolls for a turn undead for you when there's a screen full of monsters and one cleric, and how easily it gets out of the way when you try and do something improv, like swing from the chandelier. And, these are obviously beautiful scenes, but I'm wondering how well it'll work when you just have to draw a room, improv, to have an encounter off the cuff, and how easy that is to set up.
Yeah, I'm concerned about that. I think that, this is a product that they're in pre-alpha on. It's really it's awfully early for them to be hyping it. I think they're just in a place where they really want to be announcing things. But it has to make it hard to be improvisational and quick. It's obviously a clear step away from the theater of the mind thrust that 5th edition has had, because this is clearly not theater of the mind.
Right.
This is what one of my players, Rick, calls "fuck you, imagination."
Yep.
But it looks, the little bit they've shown us, it looks really cool. It looks gorgeous. I like that it doesn't try to make animation happen beyond what it looks like when the minis move. It doesn't try and make the figures actually do a lot of things and really look like characters in an MMO. But it's going to be so hard to create stuff on the fly. It's going to be hard for people to put their own stuff in there. A lot of the automation, one of the things I love about Fantasy Grounds as an online platform is it does a lot of that automation stuff for me. But it does take some mastery and some prep, and as you add complexity, does that ramp up the amount of mastery and prep that it's going to require to make those things happen?
And I don't see this, it won't be played at a convention. You won't go to the Gen Con and play this game at your table, I don't think. No one's going to have the hardware to make that happen. So it's going to be kind of a niche product, I feel like. It's going to be for those groups that play online pretty exclusively. I mean, you can play all around a table, I guess. And they have pictures of people playing around a table. There we go. All looking down on your computer.
Yeah.
But yeah. So if it does that well online, it might have legs. What are your projections? You think this will take on, David?
I wonder how well it'll do with a table in a screen in the middle of the table, as we've played sometimes, and I see it's more popular all the time.
See, that we do that, I think, for two reasons. We play with the screen on the table, and the first reason is to just sort of honor the fact that we sit around a table to play D&D, which is just a relic. And then we're doing a blended thing where we have minis that we're putting on top of the screen.
Yeah.
That way we're doing a sort of hybrid thing. And this obviously is going past that hybrid thing. But as soon as you start doing everything on the computer, why not sit on couches and use the big screen at the end of your room, on the wall?
True.
Using a table. Then everybody gets to be more comfortable, and you can take advantage of this screen real estate up there. I've played a little bit that way. I've had a couple of groups that I've played with that way, and it can work just fine. The table just becomes unnecessary at that point. But yeah, the real strength of this is going to be for playing remotely, I think.
And I still find myself foregoing a lot of the automation and find that goes faster often. And you can fall into the trap, I think, of being a slave to the automation. So it'll be real important, I hope, that this will get out of your way, like you're saying. Like, I want to do improv, I want to swing from a chandelier,
right. Get
out of the way of the DM and the players.
Well, and their rhetoric around this says that that's a value they're trying to bake into it. So I want to, and for all the missteps they're making since the beginning of the year and all of that, and the some of the widely publicized missteps from the event this week, I think that they're making, by and large, making earnest efforts to do the right thing. They just don't necessarily have a lot of experience or skill doing the things they're trying to do. And so they're making mistakes. But I like the efforts that they're putting into it. And so when they say things like that idea of improvisation and the idea of trying to let the tools get out of the way when you're trying to do stuff like that is a value that they're trying to bake into this, I want to believe that they're going to do their best to make that happen.
Yep. And we'll have a chance, hopefully, all of us to get our hands on it this year, sometime near the end of the year, and start trying it out.
I thought that they had said that it was going to be a 2025 product. So.
Yeah. And they did say that, alpha's open now for people in-house.
Yeah.
And they'll start expanding it to, I forget what they called, something creatives, the people who have the big audiences. And then near the end of the year, they thought they'd have beta for other people.
So if we're lucky, Dave's background will get us those big audiences.
Exactly. Dave knows people who knows people. That's closer than the rest of us.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's see here. We have Joe Manganiello's 50th anniversary D&D documentary, and rumor that he's doing something with Dragonlance. Yeah. So that would be interesting to see a live action Dragonlance TV series. I think that'd do really well. What do you guys think of that?
I think it has a lot of potential. So hopefully he's got the connections to get the money to get that put together.
Yeah,
he's certainly been passionate about it.
Yeah.
And then finally they got to like the real straight D&D information, and that is in 2023 we got Glory of the Giants and Dandelver and Below, tying in all the obelisks that we've seen through the different adventures. Then we got Planescape, which is going to be kind of similar in scope to Spelljammer, which isn't a plus because Spelljammer seemed pretty thin to me. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that's not a good sign, because
Right.
Spelljammer was just enough to give everyone an appetite and leave them unsatisfied.
Yeah.
You know,
Go
let
ahead, John.
me argue with that a little bit, because frankly, Eberron has got similar treatment. One book that was then superseded by another book. It wasn't even like 2 publications.
Yeah.
But the sort of the DMs Guild and community and stuff like that, Keith Baker and other people have been producing a lot of follow-on content that's available not through Wizards but through the other fan publishers and third-party publishers. That stuff is great given the sort of connecting tissue that the primary book and the official setting gives it. And so I think that our hope needs to be that these become similar seeds that spawn lots of good follow-on production from DM's Guild authors and drive-through RPG authors and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Eberron had the creator of Eberron really push out some product, and that really helped a lot. There doesn't seem to be someone taking necessarily the reins for these other ones because there wasn't a creator for those other ones. They're kind of a group thing.
Were either of you fans of Planescape or passionate about it back when it first had its heyday?
I was not.
No.
I was not involved in Planescape at all.
Yeah, that's a setting. There was a fallow period in my history where I was, trying to date or something. And
same here.
Yep, I'm afraid I kind of missed the whole Planescape bandwagon.
Damn girl.
Okay, let's see. Then plots for the future. So we're told in 2024 is going to be Vecna, the Reign of Vecna. Let's see. And then the Red Wizards of Thay will appear in 2025, as well as Venger from the Dungeons & Dragons cartoon. And the League of Malavents will appear as well, who were in the 2021 Feywild, The Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which, by the way, I think is one of the best adventures lately, The Wild Beyond the Witchlight. If you take that and you take Aventir did some stuff about turning that into a complete sandbox, that's a really great adventure, I think.
I'm really excited to have another hardcover campaign that's base D&D and kind of harkens back to the classic, in this case, Vecna, and probably Phandelver and Below. I love the Below in that title.
Yeah,
it's another thing that has me excited.
Yeah, I'm curious about that one. I don't use the full campaigns as much as you guys do, but I like I'm mining any of that stuff for ideas and NPCs and monsters and stuff like that all the time.
Okay, then we had the Creator Summit. Let me share this tab. And the Creator Summit, it talked about the virtual tabletop a lot. They were trying to push that a lot. They had a lot of conversation about just the general environment of D&D, and how that impacts creators and impacts the community. And then they tried to have some discussion about the new core rules. And this was an interesting either clarification or change of strategy on the core rules. They were really pushing that this was still just 5th edition. And got a screenshot here.
Well, this whole thing was an interesting saga. They invited 40 people, got about 30 people to Wizards of the Coast headquarters for a day of meals and tours and visits with creators and so on. the Wizards said that the goal was active listening, so they invited a lot of folks who've been passionate about championing causes like inclusivity, accessibility, freelancer relations. You can definitely credit Wizards of the Coast for not inviting a lot of folks who are just going to be cheerleaders. And so that proves out that they were looking for people who are vocal. Make no mistake, though, they were also surely trying to build some goodwill among the most vocal parts of the D&D community. So, and make those folks feel positive about D&D and hopefully communicate that to their audience. So they were also looking for folks with sizable media presences. And that doesn't mean the folks who are doing a ton of releases on the DMs Guild or a lot of freelancing work. That means a lot of streamers and, well, let's face it, streamers and video. That's the biggest chunk. So you had these passionate folks championing causes. You had, people with a big voice. And then there was sort of a weird backlash. I didn't catch this side of it, but I heard about it. People were harassing the folks who were invited, mostly on Twitter. Mostly, I think of a sense of envy that they saw reasons that they should have been invited over some of these folks who were actually invited. And boy, that sounds totally unacceptable. Nobody deserves that kind of harassment. But as for the accusations that these folks were sellouts for going to this thing, well, the story of the event shows that they definitely weren't sellouts, because the agenda kind of started off with, it was obviously built around PR purposes. They were showing the VTT. They were talking with D&D Beyond. They were having lunch and meals and presentation from D&D creators. And what happened is all these passionate champions of particular D&D causes that were in the group, they were getting a little restless and staged a mini rebellion, demanding to have a discussion of the sort of issues that they'd been championing all these years. So they kind of took over and demanded Q&A focused on the sort of issues that all the attendees wanted to talk about, and that led the discussion to localization of D&D in other languages, the expense, adjusting D&D products prices for local economies, because somebody in, say, Brazil can't afford the sort of rates that people are paying here in the United States. Problematic content like the debacle with the Spelljammer books in the Hadozi. Hiring practices at Wizards of the Coast to try and get a more diverse team, as Wizards of the Coast slowly moves from the white guys who were playing in the 80s to a more diverse, bigger group. Partner and freelancer relations, the people who work with Wizards of the Coast and how they're treated, and a lot of these folks, their dream job is working for Wizards of the Coast. So there was some discussion about hiring and how you could transition from somebody who's working in the community to somebody who's working for Wizards of the Coast. It sounded like it was a pretty good discussion, but it also sounds like it was way far afield from what the PR folks were looking to build goodwill through the D&D community by turning some of these folks into allies, what they were aiming for when they planned out the agenda.
I think they deserve a lot of credit for being willing to pivot and entertain the conversation that the people they'd invited wanted to have, and roll with the fact that their program needed to get thrown out. I also think that some of the stuff they've said since, like there's a certain amount of mea culpa in a more recent post where they're saying things like trying to do a blended event for both people who were on premise and people who were attending virtually was a terrible idea. And as somebody who has delivered training and tried to do it in hybrid ways, I know that that's exactly the lesson of trying to do things that are blended like that. It is incredibly hard to do it and make everybody feel equally valued.
Yeah.
And so they have a lot to think about, a lot to learn from in there. But this is a company that is responding to fan outcry by bringing fans in to talk to them. They're hiring, especially when we start talking about some of the diversity issues, they're hiring experts and consultants to review their stuff so that it gets reviewed before it gets published now. It doesn't mean that the experts are perfect or things are always perfect, but I mean, what efforts would we expect from them other than what they're doing? It's just they're in a tough spot and they're trying to find their way out of it the best way they can. I think they're doing really good work and don't get enough credit for it.
Yeah, agreed. I think what some of the things that show what a tough spot they are the debates about half races that came up during this session. It's going to be impossible to please everyone with how that's treated in the game, because some folks like Jeremy Crawford said that the notion of a half race is intrinsically racist, and I think there are folks who come from mixed lineages that might disagree, and some folks who might agree with that statement. So they got to find a good place to land on that. They've got to find a good place to land on race versus species versus lineage, because I've heard somebody who's willing to go to bat and say that all of those different terms are problematic. But you got to find somewhere to land, and it's tough. And I think they're doing all the work they can to find the right spot.
Yeah, I think that this expectation that they're going to land perfectly every time, especially given the amount of growth that they need to do, is really unreasonable.
So in the end, they talked about the core rules updates, and it felt like they pivoted on that too. Like they backed away from 1D&D. They claimed it was always just a placeholder name, right? And that this is just 5th edition. Continue 5th edition.
Right.
One thing I haven't seen, and maybe I just missed it in the various surveys, is what do we want as a player base, as a consumer base, from what they're doing? Do we want a completely revised set of rules where we discard our previous books? Rule books, that is. You can always use previous adventures. You can use 1st edition adventures real easy still. Or do we want them to keep it so close that you can basically use a 2014 Player's Handbook character and they fit right in with hardly any change? And in my very unscientific, barely 20-person response poll, it was a very even mix from don't change hardly anything to discard it and go 6E.
Huh.
So that's another way that they're going to have a really hard time pleasing people. And they're going to have to pick, and they're going to have to accept that they're not going to make everyone happy. I mean, if they go the rules that are just basically nothing changed, there'll be people unhappy. And if they go completely revise, there'll be plenty of people not happy.
Oh yeah.
So it sounds like they're going to try and do the latter and say the former. They're going to revise a lot, but say it's completely compatible, that's kind of a bad way to go, because then you just come across as lying or misleading.
Well, in the sense that you could play a 2014 Player's Handbook character with the new stuff. It's true, and you could play a adventure that was made for the 2014 game with the new stuff. It seems true. You don't necessarily need a conversion guide like they used to send out with new editions. I know I've got a 2nd edition conversion guide and a 3rd edition conversion guide somewhere in boxes at home. So I think there's a certain element of truth to that.
Certain element. They'll get to like, what will the rules be for their Adventure League games? Can you play a 2014 Life Cleric, or do you have to play a 2024 Life Cleric? Because they're different.
Yeah.
Is it acceptable to play the old one? Can you play a 2014 sharpshooter crossbow expert, or do you have to play a 2024 sharpshooter?
Well, I think what they would say is you have to play. You can play a 2014 sharpshooter crossbow expert, but the
Using the
feats
new rules.
Yeah.
have to use the new rules.
Yep.
So I guess somebody who brings that 2014 character to
It's
the
gonna be a little
table is going to
disappointed.
have an awkward moment where they learn that their character is not operable anymore.
Right. Yes.
And that is certainly something that we definitely need. But I can understand that is a huge feel bad moment when somebody says, "Oh, this character is not legal to play."
Yeah.
It's we've taken this big pendulum swing from Adventure League being controlled by fan administrators who had very specific ideas about what was appropriate and would limit what we could play and stuff like that. And now it's swung in the other direction, and it's more controlled by Wizards themselves, and it's much looser, and lots of things are possible that weren't possible before. Remember the days when you need to have a cert to play a sort of off-brand race?
Play a goblin. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like, now whatever the heck you want to do, just go have fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Play an Oroco Cross. You used to have to DM basically every adventure in a whole book and record it, and then they let you play an Oroco Cross.
and you have to name him Jonathan.
Yep. Name Jonathan. Not so much anymore.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how they navigate that stuff, but I think that the choices that they make will be choices that are, they'll always, if they look at a choice, look at a decision, they're going to be making decisions that are more inclusive rather than less. They're going to be simpler rather than more complex. They're going to be looking for accepting rather than limiting or controlling. And so that's probably still good directions to be moving in.
Any last words, David?
No, not on the general direction of the core rules here, the 2024.
I just one little minor announcement here. Share this instead. So we've been looking a little bit at the Project Black Flag from Kobold Press, and they've given it a name now, Tales of the Valiant. We'll see how that progresses.
Interesting.
Certainly an interesting story this is going to be, to see how much engagement and pull they get. Wizards is doing everything they can to bring back the people they made angry. But those people that they made angry are checking out other systems, and maybe a few other systems will kind of rise up and get a lot more play than they used to. And that's, I think, a good thing for the diversity in the industry, the diversity of the rules, the diversity of the people, that it's not all controlled by one, corporation.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, we got to wrap this up because we got some Shadow Dark to play, speaking of other rules, in a little bit. So we'll see you guys all later. Thanks for watching.
Bye, folks.
Bye.